Hey friends, if you're using Playwright, you are probably very used to running this command here. npx playwright test allows you to run all your tests right from the command line. But have you ever checked all the provided command options? If not, don't worry, I will show you my favorite ones in this video. Let's go! As always, I've prepared a quick example project that includes currently 3 spec files. So we have here example 1, 2, and 3 spec.ts that include all the Playwright example test cases that you get when you bootstrap a new Playwright project. I can now go to the terminal and I can run all the tests using npx playwright test, or I can only run the first spec file here, example 1, by grabbing on the absolute file path, so that we're now running only 2 tests coming from example 1 spec.ts. And whenever we run npx playwright test and we peek into the test results, you will find that there's a hidden file that is called last run JSON. This file now includes the status of our test run, which passed in this case, but it also keeps track of failed tests. And this information comes in super handy when you're dealing with a large and complex Playwright codebase and you don't want to run all the test cases all the time. So let's go into our test case and let's break something. When we change this web-first assertion that expects a heading with the name installation to be visible to installation, and we again run all the Playwright tests, so let's do npx playwright test, we will see that we run 6 tests, but one of them will be failing. And when we now check again our last run JSON, we have here an ID for all the failed test cases. And now that Playwright knows that there were failed test cases, we can go back to the terminal and we can say npx playwright test, and that we only want to run the last failed test cases. So in this case, we're running 1 test that failed previously. So the last failed flag allows you to focus on failing test cases so that you can debug them and rerun them and tweak them to get rid of your test failure. So when we now fix our test again, we can run again npx playwright test last failed. So in this case, we are all green. When we peek into last run JSON, it will be empty. And when we now want to run last failed again, it will tell us, hey, there were no failing test cases, so we are not able to run any tests here. But last failed isn't the only option to avoid running all your Playwright tests all the time. If you're using Git for version control, which you probably do, you can also run only spec files that are changed and not committed yet. So when we now change the file here, let's go to example 2, and we just change this title here, and we go to the command line and ask for the Git status, it will tell us, hey, you have 1 modified file currently not committed in your project. And Playwright is smart enough to reuse this information. So when we go back to the terminal and we say npx playwright test only changed, it will now only run example spec2 because this file is the only one that is currently changed in our version control. But only change doesn't stop there. So let's go ahead and create a new branch and let's call it video recording. So we now have here 1 changed file, which is example2 spec. And if we, for example, duplicate this and go with example 4 spec.ts, and we give this one here 4, we now have in our Git status 1 modified file and 1 added file. If we now go ahead and we commit it, and I have a little shortcode here, so git YOLO is just taking anything dirty in my Git repo and is committing it, we can now go back and run and compare our current branch with the main branch. So when we now call npx playwright test, it will figure out the different spec files between our branch right now and main. And you see here now that it's running 4 tests, which are coming from example 2 spec, which was modified, and example 4 spec, which is new. So when you, for example, don't want to run all your test cases in your pull requests or in your CI/CD pipeline, you can pass any Git ref here to only change to limit the spec files that Playwright will run when you call npx playwright test. But how can you now guarantee that you're not committing and merging flaky tests? For that, Playwright allows you to run all the tests repeatedly and a number of times. So in this case, we will run only the spec files that are different from the main branch, but we will repeat all of them 10 times. So when we now run this, you see that we're now running 40 tests, and when they're all green, we can be confident that we're not pushing and committing flaky test cases to our Playwright codebase. Similarly, if you're a fan of using test.only here, you can always run npx playwright test, and you can now say that you want to repeat this one test that is controlled by test only, let's say 20 times. And here we now have a single test case that is running 20 times. So with the repeat each, you got to really make sure that your test cases are not flaky. But here's another tip. Assuming that you're running your tests in CI/CD, it can be very risky when a test only sneaks into your CI/CD pipeline and you accidentally committed it. For these cases, it's recommended to run your test cases in CI/CD with the forbid only flag. So you're not accidentally nuking all your tests by running only a single test case. So here Playwright is telling us, hey, watch out, you're only running a single test from all the tests that are defined. And with that, we're almost done, but let me show you a last trick regarding UI mode. You might know that when you run npx playwright test, that you can pass the --UI flag to enter Playwright's UI mode. What I like to do, especially when I debug tests, is to pass the headed flag and also the workers1 flag when opening up UI mode. Because this has now the advantage when I'm debugging and running my tests in UI mode. First of all, they're running sequentially, one worker at a time, but I can also follow along in the real browser window to see what is happening. So we see here all the goodies from UI mode, but if I wanted to, I can also watch and check the actual browser that is running my test cases. So when you're using UI mode a lot, it's always good to check what additional options you can also pass to npx playwright test --UI. And that's all I have for you today. If you have any comments or questions, drop them below. And if you want to learn more about Playwright and the nitty-gritty details of end-to-end testing, make sure to check out our Playwright tips playlist here on YouTube. We already have over 40 videos, and we're not gonna stop. And if you wonder what we do here at Checkly, we allow you to reuse all your existing Playwright test cases and run them on a schedule from around the globe to receive timely alerts in case something is happening and something is wrong in production. And now we're really done. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you very, very soon again.